welcome to Friendship News Hour, presented to you by Bummer Dude Media. Today is August the 16th, 2023. My name is Frank. His name is Alex.
Hello.
Taylor Swift is going to gross $1 billion for her Eras tour.
What the fuck?
$1 billion.
She's stimulating economies over here.
Seriously. I read something that she's like legitimately stimulating the economy in Los Angeles for her shows at SoFi Stadium. Like legitimate, there's an economic impact from her being in Los Angeles for that many shows. I still refuse to believe that many people like her that much.
I was gonna say, man, I see, like our era, our generation, like she hit at the perfect time. We're like a lot of people our age were like in high school, college, and she kind of blew the fuck up. Kind of like, I guess you would say, the song of the generation, songbird of the generation for many females our age. As she's grown, as the time has passed, it seems like her fans have just become more and more into her, and like obviously her music's changed and stuff, but. I've heard people, I was playing pickleball with my sister not too long ago, and someone said, like, she is the best songwriter ever. And I'm just like, there's a lot of 4-chord songs there. Like, I get that she touches your nerve or whatever, and she speaks to you. But hold on, let's slow that down a little bit.
I think definitely she's better than some people give her credit for, right? She's not just a pop star. She's got a lot of talent. But I don't know, if you look at the top grossing tours right now, or like the highest ticket prices for artists, it's all like older artists. Bruce Springsteen, Fish actually commands like over $200 a ticket. The highest grossing tour before Taylor Swift just shatters the record was Elton John's Goodbye to Yellow Brick Road. So it's interesting that like all these other artists that command that kind of price are doing so because of like nostalgia, or this might be the last time I see them, so I'm willing to pay this price. Taylor Swift is in her 30s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so, like later 30s.
Not even in her 40s yet, but this much fanfare. I mean, I've just seen so many people like out of the woodwork just be like, yeah, I'm going to see Taylor Swift.
She's only 33, Frank.
33 years old.
God.
Wild.
It's nuts. I knew someone, she was here in Chicago, I think a month or two ago on the same tour, and people were paying, I think it was like upwards of $350 to sit in like nosebleed 300s at Soldier Field. And she was here like all weekend. So she was selling that out all. It's just nuts to think about. I would pay $350 to sit like 100 level, close front row, whatever, to like a few artists that I really, really like, let alone that much just to, be there for the moment or whatever. She's got dedication from her fans. I got to give it to her.
You bet, man. So this Eras tour, it consists of 52 U.S. dates and an additional 54 international for a total of 106 shows worldwide. The tour will not end until next summer in London. Each one of these shows, at least in the United States, grosses about $10 million. And if you break down the numbers, about 50% of that goes to Taylor herself. So the stadium, say she's performing at SoFi Stadium, SoFi would take about $2 to $3 million from that $10 million gross. And then she has to pay her staging costs and promoters and everything that it costs to put on the production, which takes about half of the remaining $7 million. So every time she steps on the stage and strums that guitar, she gets paid about $3.5 million profit.
Good for her, man.
Pretty good.
I saw Drake just made $5 million for a couple shows he did back to back in
Drizzy?
Yeah, maybe DC it was, or somewhere East Coast-ish. Made a killing, man. It's like the first time in hip-hop it's happened, apparently. You're also seeing like such a welcoming back to shows, like after people, I know we're like somewhat removed from COVID, but like, these are kind of some of the first like big ass tours post COVID, and you're seeing just some of that, like, fuck yeah, let's get back to live music, out of the house, big crowd, that kind of thing. Like, maybe, I don't know. Yeah,
it's definitely interesting, and there's also like an interesting juxtaposition between these giant shows that gross a ton of money for artists that are established, and also like the threat of AI music. Mm-hmm. And just generally artists not being able to profit off of their work like they used to. The exception being these giant global superstars like Taylor Swift, Drake. I wonder how long that lasts for.
Yeah.
Will there ever be like another Taylor Swift or another Drake? I mean, I gotta imagine so, but I have no idea.
Yeah, right. It's getting into gray area. I think so. Like, as long as they don't let AI into, Grammys and all these other award ceremonies and like charts, like that kind of thing. As long as they keep that separate, I think there'll always be someone. I don't know to this level though. That's a really good point. Really good point. And it's also crazy to hear that she's making that much money, because the way these artists get paid is kind of all came out during the whole thing with Live Nation Ticketmaster. Started with this tour. Like that whole the thing that went to Congress and everything started with her pre-sale for this tour. And all the artists, like, they set the cap at how much, like, what seats will be set at what. And once they set that cap, obviously the tickets sell, and then it's just up to the resale market, places like Vivid Seats, Live Nation, all these other places, to then, people can sell them themselves. And that's where you're seeing these poachers and scalpers go and charge $350 to sit in the nosebleeds. Like, I think those seats are actually like $100 as far as Taylor Swift's concerned. She's making, you said 50%, so she's getting $50 off that ticket. But then someone can go and flip that shit for $350, whatever plus, and make all that profit. It's crazy. And to me, like, I would hope that if we're going to keep seeing concerts like this, and it's really about like the concert and the artists and the fans connecting, that they find a way through these secondhand websites to at least limit that. Like, I understand wanting to make some kind of a profit for turning a ticket, but when you're going and selling a ticket for 300-400% just because you got in line first, or you made an AI or a bot to go on and buy 50 tickets as soon as they went on sale, that's a big problem. And I think if we're going to expect to see these large format concerts continue, they've got to get that in rein in check, or it doesn't make any sense for casual fans to even go. But I guess if people are paying it, if it makes dollars, it makes sense. So I don't know. That's just wishful thinking.
No, yeah, I agree. That's the ultimate litmus test, right? People are going to buy it. And absolutely, people are buying it. I think one of the most badass things I've seen in music, or just in business in general, is Taylor Swift re-recording her albums.
Yeah.
So that the person who owns the masters and wouldn't release his hold on them basically has no power now. To give you some background, I'm not sure how many people are even well versed in this, but some guy, don't even know his name, bought the masters of Taylor Swift's recording. Basically, he owns those recordings. Even though she wrote the music and recorded the music and performed the music and put out the albums in her name, she doesn't own the master. I guess, would you liken that, Al, to like, what was that fad? Those
planking?
No, like what were those things you could buy with Bitcoin, like the
NFTs?
Yeah, like would you liken it to like an EFT?
Somewhat. With music, the way it works is for any song that you hear released, there's a 50-50 split between songwriting credit and publishing credit. And when you own a majority of those, you own like the master to the thing. But really, it's the publishing that people give a fuck about, because that's what you make money off of. That's how you hear a Taylor Swift commercial or music in a commercial, because whoever owns that publishing has the rights to distribute it however they want and profit off it however they want. The songwriter will still make credit. And I think on a lot of Taylor's music, she is a songwriter, but there's also other people always listed. Like with big artists like this, they need a camp of people, so that like those profits get diluted. But then once you own the publishing, you own everything you really need to make the money with that thing, and you can do whatever the fuck you want. That's why people like Led Zeppelin have held out for so long, and you really never hear their music in commercials, because they own those masters and they refuse to distribute them that way. They don't want to, their music already overplayed enough. They don't want to continue to dilute their legacy. So yeah, when someone swipes in and grabs all her masters, they really control her music for always. And in some cases, like they can even take the songwriting credit, and you'll see no money. Like I think it was, The Dream. You know who The Dream is? Songwriter for Kanye, like so much hip hop and R&B music, you'd be blown away. He sold the masters to all of his music, and he got a huge lump sum up front, and he'll never see a dime off any of the music he wrote for the last 20 years ever again. So there are different ways to structure it.
Such a bizarre industry.
It is. It also helps more people get paid better, though. Like I see why they split it between the publishing and the songwriting. Because, yeah, you can write a great song, but if no one ever hears it,
what's it matter?
Yeah, what's it matter in the scope of the music business? Right. So it makes sense that you'd incentivize both parties, i.e. the artist, and then how it used to be, like the record label, who usually is who owns most of the masters, to go out and distribute and make this person a star, as they have with Taylor. I wonder, though, as we saw this shit with Marvin Gaye and Ed Sheeran recently, like how is she able to do that legally? It must be because she's like the songwriter on the track, but how is she able to like reproduce that song, although different? it is still like the same song in essence without getting sued? I'm really curious.
I don't know the details behind it, but obviously it's on the up and up because I think she just did it for the third time. Like she re-recorded either second or third album of her own, calling it Taylor's version. And I just think it's so badass. Like,
it's genius because she probably got paid for the original album that she dropped on whatever her record label is. I'm sure she gets at least a percentage of sales, even if she doesn't own the masters. And then this lets her take those same songs that she wrote and make 100% of the profit. Like, it's genius, especially with the fan base that she has.
And that's the key. She has a rabid fan base, and so when she puts it out, her fan base is going to support her and play this version of her songs versus the version that she doesn't own. I just, it's incredible. It's one of the most badass things I've ever heard.
Yeah,
it would be like I don't know. It's hard to like even make a comparison for anybody else's job who isn't an artist, who doesn't make, I could write a report that makes my company $3 million, right? And I get a cut off of that, but I'm a paid employee. It's my job to do that, and if it happens to do well, then great, then I get promoted or whatever. But I don't own sole responsibility of that work because I'm a paid employee. Taylor Swift, like every other musician, works for themselves. Bizarre industry, but really badass move by Taylor. Good for her.
Yeah, gotta respect it. I don't think I'm gonna pay that money to go see her tour, though. I can tell you that much.
No. Take nothing against her. Like I said, I think she's incredibly talented. Just not for me. And that's okay. Did you know that we've been lied to our entire lives?
Yes.
About everything. That's our show. No. About maps.
How so? Yeah, I've actually was looking at something recently about state borders concerning this, but go ahead.
No. This has nothing to do with state borders. It has everything to do with, like, the map that we've always looked at, the globe. Everything. The proportions of the map that we know are so distorted. And I remember seeing something on Twitter, and I saved it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I watched an episode of The West Wing. And in this episode, it's this tradition that they hold that one day a year, they let in other agencies that would otherwise have absolutely no chance of speaking to anybody close to the president, and they allow them a meeting, and each one of the president's staff takes a meeting with a different agency, and they hear him out. Whether anything comes of it or not, who knows, but they just hear him out, and it's really cool. It's a really cool idea in the show. And so these people come on, and they're like, hey, the maps are wrong. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, the maps are wrong. They're like, this is the map that you've always known, and now here is the actual size of each individual country, and I'm going to show you a video right now that kind of describes what I'm talking about.
This piece off here, and put it over here. And now you see, the United States is no longer in the middle of the map.
Right.
Now, I did this with a major record company in New York City, I think in 1970. And an older man stood up in the back of the room and said, now, Elliot, you've gone too far. I said, what's your problem? You can't do that with the map. I said, well, actually, you can. He said, no, the United States isn't in the middle of the map anymore. I said, the United States never was in the middle of the map. You need to realize this depends on how you draw your map. And then I pointed this little fact out to him. South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland.
Even though it doesn't really look like it.
No, it is. South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland.
It's crazy.
Now, according to your social studies teachers, what is the equator? Halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole on this map would be right about here.
Right.
And that means that Iowa has a semi-tropical climate. Well, you've been in Minnesota in the wintertime.
I've been in Iowa too. It's definitely
You know that it doesn't have a tropical climate. So you have to then introduce a real version of the map of the world. This is the one. The sizes on this map are right. The shapes are distorted.
Wow.
Look at Greenland on this map. Right there. See it?
Yeah, it's really tiny.
See how small that is?
Right.
Look at it on the Mercator projection.
So why do they do that? I don't understand.
Why? Because the Pope commissioned Mercator to make a map that shows the spread of Christianity. So all the countries in which there are predominantly white people are larger than those in the southern part of the world, halfway between the North Pole and South Pole.
I have heard that before with how big like Africa is, and then the Greenland example.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely like zero representation of what the actual map really looks like. In the show I was watching, they actually took it a step further and they said, what if the North Pole was actually the South Pole? I'm like, what are you talking about? And go, well, it's just how you draw the map. And they just flipped it upside down. They're like, look, like there's nothing.
yeah.
There's like nothing that says that the North Pole is the North Pole and the South Pole is the South Pole. It's just how we've oriented ourselves to the way that the globe looks. And I guess for simplicity's sake, that makes sense, and it's easy to digest. But I never knew we could be looking at the map and it was a completely like distorted representation of what actually is going on.
That's a distorted representation. I saw recently. How many sides does Colorado have?
Sides?
In your estimations?
4?
That's what a perfectly normal person would think. Actually has 697 sides because when the 19th century excavators were going through and doing the borders for all these new U.S. states as they were coming in, they didn't take into account the spherical shape of the earth, and they were just going straight north. Basically, that was their job, go straight north till you hit, I think it's Wyoming that's up there. But they didn't take into account the curvature of the earth and realized this, I think, about a quarter of the way through. So then they started doing like little jaunts of like 500 feet to try to get back to what they thought was the pole. And as a result, it has 697 sides, which makes the shape of this state a hexa, hecta, enia, canta, chi, heptagon. So just a little fun there. That is not something to lie to people. It is more just a large mistake that was made by.
Well, because if you look at the map, it looks like it's just 4 sides.
But that whole west coast is just a little jaunts in and out. Some as much as 3,000 feet. But
that's pretty funny.
Isn't that wild? I never knew that before. But that's not a lie. That's just a mistake. So humans have made mistakes for centuries and will continue to do so.
There's anything right? I guess there's nothing wrong with the way that it looks now, the map, right? Like does it do a disservice to anybody? I don't know. But it just seems odd that that's how it's presented. And it makes me wonder, like, do other countries have different maps? Do other countries understand the globe differently? I gotta imagine so. If there's enough people in the United States that can believe that the Earth is flat, then I'm sure there are people outside of the United States that can believe that the globe looks different.
That's very interesting. And it all comes back to religion, man.
I know.
Into us.
What the heck? One more kind of oddball story before we get into the meat and potatoes. Doctors had put a genetically modified pig kidney into a brain-dead person, and that pig kidney has worked for 32 days and counting.
Wow. That's a good way to test that. That's
right.
genius.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, it's kind of crude, but I mean, if you're going to test it, right, and somebody wants the legacy of their loved one to be of something of great importance, donate their still warm body to science. I think that would be cool. I would sign that paper.
Are you an organ donor, Frank?
I am. You betcha.
It's a great thing. Same here.
Yeah.
But I know a gentleman whose job it is to do the excavating once someone passes.
Oh, really?
It sounds crazy. Yeah, dude, they hollow you out. You're empty. And they like basically stuff you so that you can be buried. But it's like, you're saving life. With every single one of those organs, you're saving somebody's life. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? But it's just weird to think. I mean, you don't need that vessel anymore once you've left this earth. But it is weird to just think about everything that is you being hollowed out and dispersed across the world.
There is a gentleman from Florida who part of his biological vessel still lives on in my mother.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, what'd she get? Can you share, or is that a
kidney and liver transplant?
Wow. Oh, from the same person? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Insane.
Yeah, see?
Insane.
That's amazing.
I know. It's incredible. It's like that. So cool. The fact that we might be able to do it with other animals, I think, is cool too, because there's definitely not enough to go around. Mm-hmm. My mom had to go to Florida actually to get these transplants because California would have taken too long. One Dr. Robert Montgomery and colleagues at New York University Langone Health Center in New York City transplanted the pig kidney into 57-year-old Maurice Miller on July 14th. The results, which haven't been published, might provide researchers with data to support clinical trials testing animal to human transplants. The same researchers had previously put pig hearts in humans and that worked up to 72 hours. I think they stopped it at 72 hours. But there are people that kind of raise some ethical and scientific questions. For instance, extending the length of studies delays burial and closure for families. Let's say you signed a paper that said, I would like my body to be donated to science. However it is that might manifest itself. And you and your wife were both on board with that. So that's a really good thing to do. and then tragically you go brain dead. And you and your wife were really the only ones with knowledge of that agreement, and so your family, knowing that you're brain dead, has to wait an extra 3 months to bury you. That could be tough.
I could see that. Yeah,
that could be tough.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. The first thing I thought about when you just told me this story is, what does PETA think about this? Because it's like, I guess you're putting like, hey, we should treat animals better because we're gonna maybe put their organs in humans someday. But I just went to their site and they have a specific story on this story about the pig.
Oh, really? PETA does?
Yeah, and they said that animal to human transplants are unethical, dangerous, and a tremendous waste of resources that could be used to fund research that might actually help humans. I mean, it sounds like this would help humans from what they're finding initially, at least. But you're basically, we already raise animals to slaughter them for our own food, and now we're harvesting their organs. It's a little. I could see how it could be perceived as cruel, and this has got to be increasingly harder to do in like today's society and world with how people are. But
yeah,
it makes sense to me, man. It's like, I'm not going to let someone die on a list, for a heart transplant because they can't find a heart.
Yeah.
As opposed to sacrificing this pig. Like, who gives a fuck about that pig? I don't know.
I mean, right. Like, if you're going to eat, maybe if you're not PETA, but if you're going to eat bacon, you can't also be like, you can't take that pig's liver.
Yeah.
It's just one thing that's interesting here that I think will probably, that should at least like raise a few more eyebrows than just using the organ of an animal, is that pig cells contain a sugar molecule that triggers the human immune system to attack the organs, right? To essentially to reject it altogether. So scientists have to use CRISPR to modify the gene sequence in the pig DNA and the human DNA so that there isn't this rejection. And I am far too stupid to understand at a scientific level how this works. Mm-hmm. But it just in my gut, that is a bad idea. That's a terrible idea. Like, that's not a good thing. I feel like you can get to the edge of playing God, and then once you actually start to modify genes, I don't know, man. That shit to me just seems like you don't have control over what happens after that.
Right. Or what you could cause, disease wise. You don't know.
Anything. You're essentially taking a DNA strand and you're splicing it and you're adding human genes to pig DNA. Maybe it's just in my head that I think that's a bad idea, or that I've seen too much Twilight Zone or Black Mirror.
It sounds like a premise to a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, right. But I just I don't know, man. That's just kind of odd. It's odd that you have to do that in order for it to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I will take this opportunity, though, to tell everyone to go and donate blood now. People need it. I'm O negative, so I get harassed by the blood people all the time, but I actually enjoy going in there and giving the donation every few weeks or whatnot. But definitely is one small way you can help people. So that is my recommendation of the day.
This is true. It's actually good for you. Other than you being a good person and donating blood, it's actually good. There are studies and theories that women live longer because they shed their blood on a regular basis, where men don't do that.
Wow, that's fucking crazy. I never thought about that.
Right. But if you deplete your blood stock, then your body's forced to regenerate new blood cells. And there are studies and theories that believe that is a good thing on the whole. So other than it being a decent thing to do for humanity, we always need more blood. It's probably to your health benefit to get it done too.
You burn calories when your body's remaking those red blood cells. So you also can lose weight by donating.
Get skinny, donate blood.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes.
I guess so.
Politics.
Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in Georgia. Dude, it's so annoying.
I've heard you say that 3 times before.
I have said that 3 times before in different territories. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and other Trump allies have been charged with operating a criminal enterprise that sought to overturn Joe Biden's electoral victory in Georgia, making it the 4th time the former president has been indicted this year and deepening his legal woes ahead of the 2024 election. There were 19 people in total charged with the indictment, including former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and legal advisor Sidney Powell. Taken together, the Georgia charges allege a sweeping criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election result and undermine U.S. democracy. They described calls, emails, and other efforts to allegedly press state and federal officials into backing the effort to find votes. Trump lacked to win or assert that he was victorious both in Georgia and other states. He lost. It stems off of a phone call he made to some Georgia electors where he's like, hey, I just need to find X amount of votes, right? And all you hear is that clip that's being played over in the media time and time again. He's not saying, hey, I need you to go in the basement and find 4,000 votes for me. Like, legit not what he was saying. He was saying, hey, I've seen fishy stuff going on in Georgia. Everybody's seen fishy stuff going on in Georgia. I only need this amount of votes to win. And I'm saying I think that there are things that have happened that aren't legit in this election. And so I want to go through the processes to find out, were these votes counted legally? Should these votes have been nullified? This, that, and the other. I'm not denying that he was a man desperate to retain power, but to say that there was a criminal enterprise that wanted to overturn the 2020 election is a giant leap from what actually happened. But that's what he's charged with. And that, to me, it's concerning on a number of levels, I think.
What's more 2023 than Donald Trump and Young Thug being arrested in the same state for the same crime? This one seems like one of the bigger stretches to me. Seems like he's going to have a lot of hurdles to jump through. And I'm sure that that's the point. But it's just, I don't understand how you liken the two. Like, Thug is accused of murder and drug trafficking and all these other things. And there's still a chance that he might get out. And then they bring a charge like this against Trump. It's like, that can't stick. Like, there's no way it's going to stick. This dude's not a mafia leader, vote swayer guy. He was honestly was just trying to hold on to power, like you said, and trying to find any avenue he could to do that in an election he thought was rigged, fraud, whatever. But to liken it to a RICO case is just a stretch to me. And then it also came out this week that the lady that's leading that RICO chase against Thug and Trump now was smashing one of the high members in YSL and in Young Thug's crime organization as she's pursuing it.
I had heard that.
And that might fall apart based on that right there.
It just might. The DA's office has alleged that since Young Thug and the members of YSL and YFN crews had been locked up, murders in Atlanta have gone down 35%.
Oh my God. That is crazy.
Correlation is not causation. The murder rate could have gone down by 35% for any number of reasons. But it is interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting that that's the catalyst there, or at least that's how we're looking at it. I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting. To me, this is political assassination in broad daylight. That's how I see this. I can't see it any other way.
Desperation from one side for sure. Trying to find anything that, throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Right.
And yet the man that they're doing this to currently leads the Republican primaries at a rate of, what I'm seeing, and these are real-time results, 53.7% as of today. And the next closest person is Ron DeSantis at 14.7. His core voters aren't being shook by this. There might be some fringe voters that maybe sway on this, but it's like, I think a lot of people are seeing like the ineffectiveness of the current regime and like the political assassination that they're trying to do to this guy. And I don't think that many people will actually be swayed when it comes time to vote. And if the Democrats actually choose to run with Biden, I think it's on the wall, bro. I don't think Trump has any problem beating them at all. Like, even with 4 indictments open or whatever against him, like it's wild.
Unless he runs out of money, right? I think it only strengthens him.
I don't know. One guy that I've kind of been paying attention to more, I'm just kind of sick of all the Trump shit, and it looks like he's going to be the nomination. I think that, unless he gets like arrested, like at this point, it's like kind of the writing's on the wall for the Republicans. So it really starts to shift focus to, vice president, maybe who's going to be in that cabinet. And one guy that's really caught my attention over the past weeks is Vivek Ramaswamy. Are you familiar with this guy?
Yeah, I know of him.
Younger guy. Mm-hmm. He's like new on the scene. I think he's 38.
Yeah,
so very young.
Pretty young.
Yeah, very young in American politics. But I've heard some clips. I want to play it for you. So a couple of them go a little long, but just like his thought process on stuff, the way he talks and explains himself. One thing I saw him mention is he thinks that in these open forums and these debates that the teleprompter should be cut off and it should actually be what the person thinks, no being fed any information, any facts, any bullshit, which I couldn't agree with more. Look, and it's leaning, Trump's even hinting that this is probably going to be his guy for vice president. He's gaining in the polls quickly. Like I said, DeSantis has he's in second right now with 14.7, and Ramaswamy already has 7%, and that number keeps on rising as you look at like these polls. It kind of just is trending upwards. So I wanted to play you a couple clips of his and kind of just get your opinion on him here.
While you're pulling that up, just a quick thought on what's going on with Trump right now. I think one of the things that we've, as a society, been one of our high crimes is that we've accepted the story that was presented to us from day one about Trump or about January 6th or about any of the things that he's accused of. I think that's the only way that you can get 4 indictments on a former president like this and not lose the entire political base for like such weak crimes. Anyway, you got it ready?
Yes. Here we go.
Do you think it's normal to be gay? And do you have any problem with people being gay? And then
no, I do not have a
religious
problem.
basis, et cetera. No problem. Yeah. So then the second,
of course,
talking about trans, I heard you on Meet the Press say that trans was a mental disorder, which it was in the DSM-4, I guess, or whatever the latest one was, just to a couple of years ago, and now it's changed. So maybe explain why you think differently about those two things. One, you think it's fine to be gay, but you think it's a mental disorder in all likelihood if people want to transition.
Yeah. So, I want to leave you with a good sense of where I'm at on these issues, right? So I think it's at least curious that when you take the LGBTQIA plus value set and vision for what the movement stands for, it does require you to adopt simultaneously conflicting beliefs at once, right? The gay rights movement was predicated on the idea, which I'm quite sympathetic to, that the sex of the person that you're attracted to is hardwired on the day you're born. But now with the T component of that same movement that now says your own gender is completely fluid over the course of your own life. And I think if we're not going to observe the tension between these two observations, I think that we're purposefully having our heads stuck in the sand. I think what's happening in many cases is somebody who claims to be trans is really just gay. And part of what we're saying is it's not okay to be gay. So to answer your first question, part of what the trans movement is effectively telling people is that it's not okay to be gay. You know who else says that? Iran. Actually, Iran is a nation that if you are gay, they force you to undergo gender conversion surgery. It's not that different.
That's a small stretch.
Than what's baked into the ideological premise of much of the trans movement here. And so I just want you to come from the fact there's a lot of people in the GOP who will offer surface level stuff here. I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Gender dysphoria is what I've said is a mental health disorder. I've been very precise. Let's take the intersex case out of it. Klinefelter syndrome, Jacobs syndrome, right? Klinefelter is XXY. Jacobs syndrome is XYY. These are ultra rare. They exist. They are real. For the purpose of our discussion, though it's under the broad trans umbrella, I'm going to take that out of it because that's not a mental health disorder. That's a genetic reality. But now let's go back to the conflicting supposition. There's no gay gene, yet the sex of the person you're attracted to, we accept for civil rights purposes as hardwired on the day you're born. Yet there are X and Y chromosomes, and yet your own biological sex/gender is now completely fluid over the course of your life. There's a tension there. And I think that tension is best explained by the way we've treated it for most of our national history, for most of our medical history, all the way through actually, I think the DSM-5, not just the 4, as a mental health condition. And I think the compassionate thing to do is not to affirm, especially when it's a kid, to affirm a kid's confusion. I think the compassionate thing to do is to recognize that there's some other psychological struggle manifesting itself in this form. And it is cruel to affirm that kid's confusion. I met 2 young women.
And by affirm, you mean surgery
Katie.
Or hormone therapy.
Surgery, hormone therapy, exactly.
So you would limit that to when you're an adult 18 years old?
Yes.
And you would ban
There's 2 women I met
parents.
here in New Hampshire, literally like where I am right now, who are in their 20s that badly regret undergoing double mastectomies. One of them underwent a hysterectomy. Both of them underwent puberty blockers.
So even if the parents and doctors agreed with it, you would say they can't make that decision for the child?
Just like you can't get a tattoo before the age of 18 in most, what we say is a decision that you are likely to regret, in many cases at least, likely to regret later in life. We let you make that decision as an adult. And I do believe we live in a free society. As an adult, you're free to identify how you want, free to wear what you want, but kids aren't the same as adults. And even among adults, there's a difference between living your life freely and expecting that everybody else changes their linguistic and traditional understandings in sports and traditional understandings in locker rooms and traditional understandings and language, that's a difference. And so I don't believe in a tyranny of the majority, but I don't believe in a tyranny of the minority either.
So that's one thing I saw, and I like the way he describes it. Some of the things, like when he likens it to Iran, that's a stretch to me a little bit, but I think he was making some very solid points. And then I saw him talk recently about how he would approach voting age for a plethora of reasons. And I think that if you look at it from this way, like it makes more sense on how to approach it instead of just maybe a lot of people that are fed a lot of shit from like our school systems and think one way coming out of school, you know, and maybe that can sway elections. I don't know. But like the way that we should approach the voting age policy, I love what he says here.
Okay. So you want to bring a new generation into politics. That's a very refreshing approach. And yet, one of your key campaign pillars is raising the voting age to 25 with a civics test or military service in order to maintain the age 18 voting age.
So my premise is this. Every young kid who graduates from high school should be able to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a citizen of this country.
Amen.
At the age of 18, let's attach civic duties to civic privileges. And I say that minimal duty is either knowing something about the country, the exact same things an immigrant has to know, or else serve the country in some minimal way, first responder role or in the military. Part of reaching young people isn't just pandering by telling them what in the short term they want to hear, satisfying their moral hunger by saying, go and, you know, what the left says, go to Ben and Jerry's and order a cup of ice cream with some social justice sprinkles on the side. No. That's not how we satisfy the hunger for purpose and meaning. I think the revival of actual civic duty is a big part of how we feed that hunger for purpose. Citizenship means something to me. And if we make it mean something to young Americans, they'll be much less drawn to secular cults from wokeism to climatism than they are today, because they actually believe that the fact that they're a citizen of the United States of America actually means something to them. And it will unite the country in the process.
I love that. I love that viewpoint of it, man. It makes perfect sense to me. I was curious what you thought about both of those comments of his.
I take that voting age one first. I get where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's like a bad idea, but something rubs me the wrong way about it. Like, for example, if we didn't let women vote, then Democrats would never win another election, right? Women in particular are the highest voting bloc of the Democratic Party. Moreover, women who are 45 years and younger with no children almost exclusively vote Democrat. So like everybody who attends a Taylor Swift concert, for example, is a Democratic voter. If we didn't let those people vote, the Democrats would never win another. That's essentially what he's saying. If we didn't let dumb 18-year-olds vote, the Democrats would never win another election. That coded word is what he's saying. I don't think it's a bad idea that kids need to have some sort of civic responsibility or civic duty about them. And I do think that there are far too many stupid children voting in elections that are just kind of checking a box because of emotion or whatever. They're woefully uninformed of the election that they're voting in, or the candidate, or anything really of the consequence of their vote. But like, good luck. I mean, good luck trying to change that.
Yeah. Well, and he's not saying don't let them vote. He's just saying they need to pass the same test that like an immigrant would pass if they want to vote, which, you know, do you really understand anything about your country, or are you just voting with, you know, with passion or with, you know, a specific ideal in mind instead of the bigger picture?
And then what's to stop a dumb 28-year-old or a dumb 45-year-old? What's to like?
No, nothing at that point. Nothing at that point. That's true.
Yeah. How many adults can pass the civic test? I get what he's saying. Start at the bottom. If you want to vote at 18, you have to know that. But you know, that's shaky ground to me. That can turn into a lot of other things, I think.
Okay. So how do you feel about his views on the LGBTQ?
Whatever.
I
honestly, I could give a shit less. Because to me, it's just words.
Yeah.
What is he going to do when he's in a position of power and he has an opportunity to actually do something to protect children? Is he going to take it? I don't know. Donald Trump had this House and the Senate, and 2 weeks into his presidency, he told America he was not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton for the crimes that she's committed against the United States.
Pretty much what he ran on, too.
Yeah. He had full power. He could do whatever he wanted. And now look at him. He's indicted 4 times. I don't like these messages to me. It's just words. I don't care what anybody says about LGBTQ rights or about trans and fuck. He literally said, "Hey, you know who else trans people are like? The Iranian government." Like, what the fuck, dude? Weirdo. I don't know. I like him. I like a lot of the things he says. I just, what are you going to do when you have power? The only person that's running for president right now who has shown me that they will actually do something constructive when they have power is Ron DeSantis. But he's as big of a goober as anybody. Mm-hmm. Trump had power. What did he do with it? The cards are stacked against him, but he had power. He did nothing with it.
Turn the economy around. That's not a small feat.
He tweeted. That's what he did. He tweeted. He could have done a lot. And he was too scared to piss people off. Nobody was ever afraid of Donald Trump. But people are afraid of Joe Biden because it's not Joe Biden. It's his administration. Because they're willing to use raw power against their political opponents. And they've shown it to us 4 times. They are not scared to take raw power and use it. It's the only thing that matters to the Democratic Party is raw power. And they have it and they use it. So if a Republican's going to run for president and they get in power, are they going to use it? Are they going to use it? That's all I care about.
True. I just like to see someone who's not like a career politician, let alone a politician at all. This guy has no like political background as far as that's concerned. So I think it gives you some of the refreshing viewpoints of like someone that like of a Trump that is not entrenched in very much at all. I mean, I'm sure through corporate world he's somewhat entrenched, but it's just refreshing. When I hear him speak, I could play you clip after clip. I like the way he's composed. He explains his viewpoints well, which makes me think that his policies would be thought out. Not that no politician's gonna go through with everything that they say, but I think he's a refreshing breath of air, and we're starting to see that reflected in the polls as he keeps climbing. And Trump's gone on record a couple of times like praising this guy and saying that he's looking, he hasn't obviously said who his person would be, but he's high on his list. So he's doing something right, man. Ohioan as well.
The way he's run his campaign, at least up to this point, he's been doing the right things, saying the right things, reacting to events in the news and political events in the way that you would hope somebody in his position would. Right? Juxtapose that from Ron DeSantis, who's just basically flubbed every opportunity. He's just been the biggest goober in the world during his run for presidency.
But he has results to stand on from what he's done in Florida. I'll give him that.
He's the only politician worth his salt that's running for president right now. That's proven that he's willing to protect people's freedoms. He's the only one.
Have any of them done this, though? Because I can't see Trump, Ron DeSantis, or Joe Biden doing what this man did recently at the Iowa State Fair.
He opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. Joking how everybody's joking now. The clock's run out. Time's up. Overflow. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. This moment of hope and hope. Lose yourself in the music. The moment.
He's one of us.
Oh, he's one of us, man. He's one of us.
Oh,
so
God,
I
it
don't
makes
know.
me crawl in my skin.
I was like, that's just going to give you fuel for your argument there. But I saw that clip. It was too good to not share with you. But I don't know. I just like younger people getting involved in politics, especially not career politicians, man. It's refreshing, at least.
Well, a lot of people thought the same way about Barack Obama. And there was a very long-form article written in Tablet magazine earlier this month by David Samuels. And it's like one part editorial, one part interview with David Garrow, who is the preeminent biographer of Barack Obama and also the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And this article, I reckon if you get a chance, it's probably going to take about 45 minutes to an hour to get through. It's really, really long, but it is fascinating. And it really gives an interesting look into the former president, Barack Obama, more so because it kind of lets you in on how tailored his image is, right? The Barack Obama we all know, we all like, the one that we voted for president twice for, is more or less a completely fabricated person. Mm-hmm. And this article goes in depth, and I'll give you some background into this article. So like I said, it starts off with some sort of editorial about Obama. Tablet magazine is it's a Jewish-run magazine, and so the focus, at least in the editorial part, sort of has to do with Barack Obama and his views or his attitude towards the Jewish people and Israel in his time as president and before. And it talks about an ex-girlfriend that he had. And when he was dating this woman whose name was Sheila Miyoshi Yeager, they broke up after an explosive fight. And in his memoir, Dreams Up From My Father, he recounts this situation. And the way he recounts it is that he was becoming more in tune with his Black self, and that this woman just couldn't keep up with him. His self-identification as a Black man, right? But the author of this article actually found this woman, Sheila Miyoshi Yeager, and she says, no, actually, it had nothing to do with that at all. There was a big, giant fight after Obama attended a rally or a speech by this gentleman named Steve Coakley. And he was talking about just pure, like Nation of Islam kind of thing, like, that can get really touchy with Jewish people, and they're pretty anti-Semitic, right? The idea is that they're the real Jewish people, and that the nation of Israel is just a bunch of frauds, and that the Jews are the enemy, this kind of and the other. And his ex-girlfriend was like, I don't care that this person's Black. I don't care that they're proud to be Black. Like, this is vehemently anti-Semitic, and I have a problem with you not having a problem with it. And Obama didn't have a problem. What's more interesting than that interaction in itself is that literally nobody reached out to this woman for comment, for an interview, for anything. She had been left alone by the media entirely. The longtime girlfriend of the former President Barack Obama, live-in girlfriend. They lived in Chicago together. I mean, like, somebody you would want to talk to if you wanted to get an understanding of who this person was before they were president. Nobody contacted her. And that, to me, was just kind of jarring. And then it goes into this interview with the biographer of Barack Obama, David Garrow. David Garrow read Barack Obama's memoir, Dreams From My Father, and he surmises without a shadow of a doubt that it is the most historically inaccurate piece of fiction that ever existed. Moreover, his memoir doesn't mention his mother, doesn't mention his wife or his girlfriends or any women at all. It's basically just him. And so what this biographer had basically come to the conclusion of is that at one point in Barack Obama's life, which was a tumultuous life as a youth, he didn't really know his mother, definitely didn't know his father at all, was kind of shuttled from Indonesia to Hawaii to the mainland and back and forth. But he was a really bright kid, and he got into Occidental. So at one point, Barack Obama decides that he is going to invent who he is. And he creates this memoir, Dreams From My Father. And it was published in 1995. So he was 20-something? He's not old in 1995. But he writes his memoir and he publishes it, right? And this becomes the cornerstone of Barack Obama. This becomes who he is as he begins to get into the political limelight. This biographer also makes this determination that, because he had also been the biographer of Martin Luther King, and he said Martin Luther King had no choice but to be Black. And Barack Obama chose. I thought that was such an interesting comment. Think about his upbringing. Raised by his mother and his grandparents. His father was the only, real Black presence in his life. His attachment to Black lifestyle really was from his father, who was Nigerian, who left his family to go live in Africa when he was a kid. And so his attachment to Black America, other than the fact that his skin was Black, his upbringing from by all accounts had nothing to do with Black culture at large, right? He wasn't raised in that, but he made it his choice to make that who he was. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just think it's interesting that his biographer said in no uncertain terms, he chose to be Black. That's interesting. And then this author raises another interesting question. Why is it that Barack Obama, after leaving the White House, bought a house in the Kalorama neighborhood of Washington? He's the only other president in the history of the United States to remain in Washington after their presidency, other than Woodrow Wilson, who had to do so because of medical issues. So he buys this mansion in Washington, D.C. And originally the explanation was that he wanted Sasha, his daughter, to remain in high school. But she graduates high school, I think in 2019. They still stay in Washington. She's already out of college. They're still in Washington. They still remain in Washington. He raises the question, what is it that Barack Obama has to do with Washington now that he's out of the presidency. This author goes so far as to say that he's actually the one that is pulling some strings. He's still playing politics. He's even said to Stephen Colbert one time that if he could stay in his basement in his pajamas and have an earpiece to a figurehead in the White House and kind of pull the strings, that he would want to do that because he finds the work fascinating. But the reason that he brings this up is because of the thousands of reporters that are in Washington, D.C., not a one of them is tracking the former president or who's coming in and out of his house or investigating why he's still in Washington. The whole point of this article is, why is it that we've taken at face value who Obama is and never investigated his claims of who he is, never investigated his memoir, never investigated this life that he's fabricated for himself, this image that he's fabricated to the American public. It talks about some love letters that he wrote to former girlfriends where he's described multiple fantasies with having sex with men. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be gay. I just think if that's public information, it's wild that we're just learning about that now. Like this isn't a revelation that came out in 2023. This has been known for a long time. It's in an article at it's in the love letters live in Oberlin College. Maybe not Oberlin. They live in some university where you can go and view them at any point.
Yeah, it's Emory University in Atlanta. Yeah, I can give you his exact words from that letter if you'd like to hear them.
Please.
In regard to homosexuality, I must say that I believe this is an attempt to remove oneself from the present, a refusal perhaps to perpetuate the endless farce of earthly life. You see, I make love to men daily, but in the imagination. My mind is androgynous to a great extent, and I hope to make it more so until I can think in terms of people. Not women as opposed to men, but in returning to the body, I see that I have been made a man, and physically in life, I choose to accept that contingency. So it sounds like he jacks off to gays. I don't know. Who cares, I guess, but it's just weird.
Yeah, in with all due respect to the former president, it seems at the very least, he is far more complicated of a human being than we make him out to be.
His brother confirmed this as well, Malik Obama, who they don't have a great relationship, so take it with a grain of salt. But he confirmed that he is basically like using his, what you kind of just said, like leaning into his heritage more, but not actually like doing anything really to help his roots and people like his brother Malik, who I guess has tried to run for office in Kenya as well. But he's also now like a huge Trump guy. So it's like, take that obviously with a grain of salt. But he like confirmed the allegations that Barack was gay. A lot of people talk about, and I don't know how to approach it without even being racist, but a lot of people like say that Michelle Obama is actually, her real name is Michael Obama and she was, trans, yada, yada, yada. I don't claim that to be true or not, but there's a lot of people that do believe that. So that would add fuel to the fire for the argument that is the case. If it is, I'd rather he would have just been upfront about it. Like, it seems like a weird thing to hide.
Well, I mean, think about when he came up. It was still taboo to be gay. I mean, he ran not so long ago on the premise that marriage between a man and a woman, right? So you might think, oh, well, he's just a political grifter. Yeah, but more than that, it seems to me that Barack Obama was focused solely on power. And the only way that he could get into power the way that he has was to tailor his image so well and protect his image so well that there's no doubt about who he is to the public at large. There was also a super, super interesting passage here. This is now when David Garrow, the biographer of Obama, is being interviewed. And the interviewer asks, it's more of a conversation than an interview, but he says, I think Barack in that winter of 08 and 09 realized that there was no way that his presidency could actually live up to the expectations. And I think even the fanboy journalists would acknowledge under a little bit of pressure that it ended up being an underwhelming, disappointing presidency. It will, in the long run, be seen as a failed presidency because of international failures. And then David Garrow responds that there was also a moment in his book, The Audacity of Hope, which I wrote about in 2008, of a warning that Barack Obama gave. And he said, whatever happens next is on you people, not me. And I was like, that is on one hand a stunningly honest and upfront thing to say. It's also a complete abandonment or rejection of the responsibility that he should be embracing in this moment. And I wouldn't even say I'm troubled by it. I was baffled by it. What does it mean? Who is this guy and where is this guy coming from? I went back and reread Dreams from My Father, which I bought when it came out. And I came upon the passage where his stepfather, Lolo Sotero, takes him out into the backyard in Indonesia and teaches him how to fight. And I said, wait a minute, I know this scene. Where is it from? And then I went back and found the Battle Royale scene in Invisible Man. So again, he would seem like fabricated everything about his life to rise to meteoric heights, sold the dream of hope and change to the American people. And then once he got it, he said, oh shit, I can't deliver on this promise. I can't. I don't know, man, just so fascinating. Like more than these revelations and learning more about Barack Obama, the man. My main question is, why don't we know this stuff already? Why is it that where are we now? 8 years out of his presidency, for 7 years, however many years out of when he left the White House, even still, he's got some sort of aura around him where there's not a major questioning of this person. Why? Because he didn't piss us off. He didn't offend us, and just because he didn't offend us, we thank him for that. I don't know how politics works that much, man. I'm not in it. So I don't know the power that he holds or why he holds it, but he does hold it. And it just seems odd to me that there's not been a large scale investigation. Who is this man? Who did we love for so long? What were his failures? And this article, they speak very in depth about the Iran deal and how his number one goal in his second term was the Iran deal, was to get it passed. And Iran is an explicitly anti-Semitic nation. They make no bones about it. They hate Jews, and they say they want to exterminate them. And Obama, in his final send-off, outside of unmasking everybody in the Trump campaign, was to give Iran a pallet of cash. Literally flew in a pallet of cash. Here you go, Iran. Here's a pallet of cash. And we still, there was no real what is that? It just happened. So if you want to read this article, it is free. There is no paywall. It is at tabletmag.com. The article is called The Obama Factor. It is a fascinating read. I recommend it to everybody.
Nice. Definitely going to check that out.
All right. Well, that is our time. Appreciate y'all listening in. If you want to reach out to us, you can send us an email at bummerdude.media@gmail.com. bummerdude.media@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Friendship News Hour and on Twitter at FriendshipNH. Please drop us a review. Be kind of cool. Rate us if you like us. Even if you don't like us and you have something that you want to say to the contrary, love to hear it. Any feedback, welcome. We'll see you next time.